What's going on, YouTube? My name is Saint the Hero, and we are back with another video today. I know it's been a while, but I got some things I want to talk about. With both of the endings of My Hero and Jujutsu Kaisen being, well, trash in my opinion, I wanted to discuss what makes them trash, and I wanted to discuss some examples of good shonen endings. And before we begin, here is your spoiler warning. I will be discussing the endings to My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen, Naruto, Dragon Ball, and Bleach. Now, to preface this a little bit as well, I'm a little bit ashamed to say that I have been a fan of My Hero since its beginning, although I do not associate myself with a certain portion of the fan base. You know what portion I'm talking about. I have been reading this manga since chapter 1, and I've been watching since episode 1, so it's safe to say that I've been following this journey all the way from the beginning. Now, with that being said, at the end of the very first chapter of the manga, Midoriya literally says, and I quote, "I forgot to mention this, but this is the story of how I became the greatest hero." End quote. Now cut to the end of the series. This man has given away his quirk in the final battle and is now a regular school teacher. He never became the #1 hero. His friends barely talk to him, and he's ending the series exactly how he started, quirkless. Well, not exactly how he started, because now he has an Iron Man suit. Big fucking whoop. And instead of him becoming the greatest hero, they do a cop-out and say this is the tale of how we all became great heroes.
Hear me and hear me good, nigga. I'm here to double down. That shit is a 2-pack of ass. The fuck are you talking about? That shit stinks.
The reason this ending is ass is because it goes against what the entire story was supposed to be building up to. Midoriya was supposed to be All Might's successor, the next symbol of peace, the standard of overwhelming strength for justice. But no, the man had a quirk for what? 1.5 years? A year and 8 months? A single school year. Like, come on. That's another issue I have with the series in general that I really don't want to go too in depth with right now. But the timeline of the story is way too short. Deku's entire journey takes place over the course of 1 school year. And instead of him actually growing with his quirks over an extended period of time, he gains his quirk a couple months before he enters high school. And by the end of his freshman year, he's defeated Shigaraki and All for One, or, his people's defeated All for One. And by the beginning of his sophomore year, his quirk is basically gone. He's got embers, and that's it. I don't know who told Horikoshi this shit was fire, but it fucking ain't. I don't know what this man was cooking in terms of story, but we need to not let that man back in the kitchen. And don't get me wrong, when it comes to art, Horikoshi is definitely top 3 in the business, no debate. But this shit right here was ass, yo. In my opinion, the story should have lasted all 4 years of high school. We should have been allowed to see Midoriya, Bakugo, and Todoroki grow up to become the new big 3, and eventually graduate and become the top 3 heroes before the final war. And without me getting into the nitty-gritty of how my inexperienced self would rewrite this manga, I just feel that Deku should not have had to give up his quirk, and he should have become the new unfettered symbol of peace, surpassing All Might, and that he was able to defeat the great evil without mortally wounding himself, and ushering in a new age of peace and heroism, achieving the goal he longed for since childhood. Deku losing his quirk after his freshman year, and then spending the next 8 years as a regular school teacher, not even having that much contact with all his friends, and on top of that, not even getting the girl at the end, is wildly unsatisfying. It just does nothing for the character, it steals all his aura, and it just makes you suck your teeth when you read it. In all honesty, this shit was ass. Now, if you take a look on the other side of the spectrum, we have Naruto. The story is 700 chapters long and lasted for 15 years. And for all of its flaws in its storytelling, all the things that people don't like about the story itself, Kishimoto still stuck the landing. Even if we don't talk about, Neji dying in the war, or Naruto's shitty ass haircut at the end of the soap story, or Boruto in general, he still stuck the actual landing. The actual ending of Shippuden was satisfactory. Now, Chapter 1 of Naruto opens up with the backstory of the Demon Fox and moves forward to introduce Naruto. We learn how he is viewed by the village, we learn that he has no family and no friends, and we learn the most important thing. He desires to become Hokage, the leader of the village, and to be acknowledged by everyone. Now, as we move forward through the series, you begin to see certain circumstances change, all building up to the final moment when his goals are actually accomplished. By the Sasuke retrieval arc, you can say that he's no longer alone. He has good, trustworthy friends. And skip ahead even further to the Pain arc, and now Naruto is acknowledged by the entire village. That's two of his initial negative circumstances that have been changed. And finally, you can skip forward to chapter 700, the ending, and he has achieved the initial goal he set in chapter 1, and that's becoming Hokage. And on top of that, he's got a family now as well. So from the beginning to the end of the story, all of Naruto's circumstances have flipped, and basically every goal he had and everything he wanted has been achieved. By the end of the series, he's the strongest ninja in the village and the world. He's made friends with basically all of his peers, but like his best friends will be like Shikamaru and Gaara. And the entire village and most of the ninja world acknowledges him as their savior. He's also gotten married and had 2 children, which means he has a family now. He's no longer truly alone. And to top it off, he actually became Hokage. Now I want you to imagine if none of that happened. Imagine if Naruto defeated Madara and Kaguya, or rather he only defeated Madara and then Kakashi defeated Kaguya. But then to defeat Madara, he had to sacrifice the 9 tails and all of his chakra to do it, basically rendering him incapable of being a ninja at all. So now imagine he never became Hokage, but instead he became the new Iruka sensei or something, like or Iruka or Ibisu, teaching the elementary class of ninja. He ain't never get no statue in the village or his head on the Hokage mountain, but someone like Shikamaru or Kakashi got a statue and all of that. All the recognition and all the fame. Imagine he never got with Hinata, never even got with Sakura, and he spent all his days alone, not talking to any of his old friends for 8 to 10 years, until Sasuke pulls up with a freaking scientific ninja tool, talking about, you can be a ninja again. How bad of a taste would that have left in your mouth? That is why the ending to My Hero is dog shit. You watch this character shed blood, sweat, and tears. Emphasis on tears, because that nigga Deku never stopped crying in his journey to become the best. And not only did he not become the best, he's just left as an afterthought by everyone around him. That shit is unacceptable. All his aura was stolen. You got everybody on Twitter talking about some just put the fries in the bag, bro. Like, that shit is horrible. Moving forward, we have endings that are unsatisfying for a different reason. Some endings leave too many questions unanswered and don't wrap up existing plot threads in satisfying ways. Sometimes an author is pressured by publication to wrap their story up faster than they would like, or sometimes an author's health could be a factor in how they finish their story, and sometimes an author just might not know what to do. Regardless of the circumstances, it's all too common for this to happen in shonen manga, and in my opinion, Jujutsu Kaisen unfortunately falls into this camp of having an unsatisfying ending. Now don't get me wrong, JJK is my absolute favorite manga and anime of the last few years aside from One Piece. But god damn does this ending leave so much to be desired. The final arc was literally a 45 chapter gauntlet of Sukuna versus everybody, and to be honest, it was reminiscent of Frieza's generational run against the Z Fighters back in the day. I'm not gonna lie, it was magnificent. What I have an issue with is what happens after the gauntlet. Instead of exploring the immediate after effects of the battle, which My Hero actually did and did that well, we didn't mourn Gojo or anybody that they lost in the battle. We didn't talk about Yuji's awakening or anything like that. We didn't talk about what Jujutsu Society would be moving forward. All we got was a recap of the battle and why things had to go the way they did, why this person had to be there and couldn't be here, and all of that other stuff. Not a single mention of Yuji basically being the strongest sorcerer alive, aside from like Yuta and Hikari now. The only person who got a mention after their death was Choso. We get a panel of Fushiguro mourning his sister at her grave, but we get no grave for our best boy Choso. We get no grave for our glorious blue-eyed king Gojo. Even after they defiled his body by possessing it, we got none of that. Then on top of that, we get all this information about the head of the new Shadow Style school, and their binding vows on the simple domain and all of that. For what? I could understand if there was a part 2 being announced, and this is set up for some big war between sorcerers for control of Jujutsu Society, but there isn't. This is portrayed as if it's the end, point blank period. Why did we need to know that the new Shadow Style school didn't want nobody learning simple domain, and Mei had to kill the dude so that they can learn it? Like, we didn't really need to learn that in the final chapter or the final few chapters of the story. Where is the relevant information? How much of Fushiguro's technique remains after Gojo destroyed so many of his Shikigami, including Maharaga? Who is the new leader of Jujutsu Society? Okay, yes, Kusakabe is the new head of the Shinkage Ryu, but what about Gaku Kanji? What is his role moving forward? Is he just a principal? Like what's going on here? How are the sorcerers operating and receiving missions with all the higher-ups dead? Does the death of the entire Zenin clan not matter? Like, there are so many questions, so many more that I have that I'm not going to list here, but we got nothing. Like, we got no Heian era flashback or information. Come on. There are so many questions that this ending leaves to be answered, and with this series being as complex and as nuanced as it is, one would expect a little bit of enlightenment at the end, right? I will say that I do believe Sukuna's ending is like, alright, but it could have benefited way more from at least a little bit of backstory on Sukuna. Like he's talking about 2 paths, but what 2 paths did he have? We don't know. All we know is that he was an unlovable wretch and he lived how he wanted. Like, how are we supposed to know what he is talking about? The appearance of Mahito was cool and all, but everything else is just like, really? That's it? That's all you got for me? And to top it off, the final panel of the series is Gigi giving us the middle finger. Like, come on, like, this is just a class act all around, isn't it? Like, come on.
And I've got to say, in all honesty, it's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Now, this will be a short segment, but I do have to talk about Bleach. I do believe that the Bleach ending and the JJK endings have a couple of issues in common. Not to say that the Bleach ending is bad. The Bleach ending is actually good, in my opinion. This is the good ending that I'm juxtaposing against the bad JJK ending. But they do share a couple of issues. I know some of y'all ain't hear me the first time. I do not think the Bleach ending is bad. I do not think the Bleach ending is bad. I do know Kubo was rushed to finish the series, which probably led to some corner cutting with writing and all of that. But again, I do not think the Bleach ending was bad. It just left me with a few questions. Some questions I had were like, what was up with Zangetsu? Can Ichigo switch between the single sword and dual swords at any time? Like, we had so many unrevealed Bankai, like Ukitake, Shinji, and Ishin. All of them were teased, but none were revealed. And while Shinji's Bankai did end up getting shown in the new 1000 Year Blood War anime, I don't really count that because it wasn't in the manga when it first came out years ago, even though it was fire as fuck to watch. And like, also, what the fuck was going on with the remnants of Yuha Baha's power? To this day, I don't understand what was going on with that shit. Like, Ichigo's kid stuck his hand in a hole and the power was gone. Like, I don't know what was going on. I do also have to say that Kubo did come out, after the ending and answered many questions that people had and whatnot. And it's still possible for JJK, or rather Gigi, to do the same thing. But the ending of JJK just feels super unsatisfactory. And there are no extenuating circumstances that we know of to have caused this unsatisfactory ending. Whereas with Bleach, we knew that Kubo was getting rushed, and he still kind of gave us a semi-satisfactory ending. So that's all I have to say about Bleach, but it's nowhere near as egregious as JJK. I just had to note a couple of the similarities there. But last and certainly not least, to end this off, I am obligated to speak on the GOAT, Akira Toriyama, and Dragon Ball. Now, while DBZ may not be the most nuanced or character complex story, it's still a damn good story. From Dragon Ball to Z to Super, and maybe even GT depending on how you're feeling that day. They're all goated. The man Toriyama wrote 2 endings, right? And he stuck the landing both times. With Dragon Ball, Goku sticking his tongue out at Kami and dipping off with Chi-Chi is a perfect ending. A perfect ending, which is both in character and fits the narrative. It's lighthearted, and it doesn't leave too many serious questions for you to ponder. So you're good. Then again, with Dragon Ball Z, Goku defeats Majin Buu and ushers in another age of peace. Then we time skip to where, oh lo and behold, another tournament, a Tenkaichi Budokai. The bread and butter of Dragon Ball, the soul, where so many amazing moments happened. And while you might have been looking forward to a final rematch between Goku and Vegeta, it's still fitting for Goku to be excited about the prospect of someone new to fight. And then deciding he wants to go train some more with this guy and fucking off into the sunset. And then you have GT and Super. I know people don't really like GT, but I can't even cap to y'all. I cried as a kid when I first watched Goku fly off on Shenron's back, taking the Dragon Balls with him and saying goodbye. That shit hit a nigga in his heart, no cap. And then again, earlier this year, when Toriyama passed and his final panel being Piccolo waving goodbye as he flies away, I had to shed another real nigga tear. Like that's 4 perfect endings. Even if you don't count GT as, canon, if Toriyama didn't write it, and even though this last chapter of Super may not have necessarily been meant to be an ending, it still fits. That's 4 times this GOAT did this. There's nothing else to say but the man is a GOAT. All of this is to say manga like Dragon Ball and Naruto and Bleach show that it's possible to have a good ending to a shonen series that doesn't steal all your main character's aura and make him a bum, or leave fans unsatisfied as fuck because no questions are answered and everybody just feels disrespected. It is possible. So let's just hope Black Clover and One Piece do it right, for the love of God.